All right, welcome everybody to the Beer and Skittles podcast. It has been a long time, a very long time.
Yeah, life's been chaotic for the two of us since our last recording. For those that do know us, Ray here has gotten married, and I myself have had a child. So it's been hard to get back in the recording space, but hopefully after this episode, we can be on a much more consistent basis and push out content weekly. But with that in mind, it's been almost slow news cycle after the hot summer we've just had. But there is one thing I know. There's a Variety article that's been circling around, that's been catching a lot of traction online about the state of the MCU.
Yeah, the article seems like a hit piece, and it seems like clickbait. And I want to jump right into the article because I do feel like it's taken a lot of issues that have happened over the last few years, just kind of rolled them all into one, and people are, just having a field day with it. And a lot of it is either not true or just twisted in a way that it, again, a hit piece against what is arguably one of the largest film studios in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you might have some actual quotes for it, but the basis of the article is basically that the MCU's on the downfall, that it's plummeting, and that it's almost past reconciliation, which is, I think, the most insane take to have for probably the most profitable company out there right now, especially in the movie space.
The funny thing is even in the article, like MCU is in shambles is basically the headline. And at the end of the article, it says, we're not writing Marvel's obituary. That would be getting ahead of ourselves. What are we talking about then? Either it's in shambles or it's not. There are a lot of things that were brought up. Blade having been announced, 4 years ago and still not being out. And there being issues with the script and Mahershala Ali wanting to leave, apparently. The movie was announced 4 years ago. I want to take a second and just look at Kevin Feige. The last time he announced all of these movies, which was 4 years ago, was unprecedented. Never before at Comic-Con or at, Disney Day did Feige ever announce 3 phases worth of movies all at once. And what we need to look at is what changed. And one of the biggest changes that happened at Marvel's parent company, Disney, is that Bob Iger was no longer the CEO. Bob Iger had stepped down, Bob Chapek had come in, and Chapek was a very different person in terms of how we handle things and how we bring in money. And Marvel being the powerhouse that it is, quantity. Put out more movies, put out more shows, put out more so we can bring in more.
Which doesn't mean just because you see all these titles come out. Also, the things that have happened since that slate has been released. I mean, pandemics, strikes, all those things. Well, there's delays out the ass. Not alone, every movie gets delayed. You can never find a movie that sticks to its original release date. The industry as a whole is a shit show. Any set, any place you go into, any editing room, everything is a shit show. Dates get pushed back.
Everything's tight.
And when you're planning for, it was literally a decade-long plan. So you can't look at, Blade hasn't released in 4 years. Well, the plan was, it's for 10 years of
right,
just content. And they're pumping out so much, yeah, but they're still making money, so they're not in shambles. Whoever wrote that article is still going to see the next movie, as well as everybody else that is.
It's so funny because I was just looking at, on that note of everybody, and I personally, I disagree, and I disagree for multiple reasons. People hate on Captain Marvel, the movie, and say what you want, but that is not the worst movie the MCU has put out. And people talk shit and say, Captain Marvel was trash, it was a horrible movie. The movie made over $1 billion, so somebody still saw it. Um, and again, I don't agree with the sentiment that, you know, Brie Larson shouldn't be playing this character. I think Brie Larson is a great actress, and I think she does a great job at playing Carol Danvers.
I just don't think Carol Danvers herself, I don't think, is a lovable character. I don't
and that's
think
fair.
she's, and that's
Fair.
fine. Not every
You know what,
character
though?
is supposed to be beloved.
Iron Man wasn't a lovable character in the comics until RDJ came in and played the part. He wasn't. There was nothing likable about him. He was an alcoholic. He was just this deplorable guy in Robert Downey Jr. brought
Yeah,
him to
but
life.
sometimes, especially when you bring that onto the live action stage, there's certain things that does make that character likable. When you have a hero that is he's the playboy billionaire philanthropist, whatever, but there's the aspects about him that make him human. That he's a total fuck up. That he doesn't try. That he just happened to have fallen and everything is in his like all that stuff.
Well, and I think
almost
that
makes him relatable. The
I
things
think
that
Carol
make him
has
such a
those
pedestal.
things. I think Carol has those things in Captain Marvel. It's the always get back up. You know what I mean? That movie is not as bad as people put it out to be.
It's not as bad, but to me, it's just she's just not a great character. I think in general, I think what redeems RDJ and Iron Man in the public eye is more the fact that Iron Man has the sarcasm, the wit, you can't tell me what to do, all this stuff, while Carol's more like a Boy Scout. She's a female Boy Scout, which is, fine for some characters, but the way that she portrays, like, Steve is campy. He's a campy Boy Scout. He's fun. He's lovable. Carol is still so serious, but still the Boy Scout. It does not create for a lot of love from the community.
I think the difference, she's this combination of, like, Iron Man's attitude, but the background of Steve, because she's a soldier, because she has the military experience. She's very much, she's the sergeant. She gives orders, and you take orders, and you don't, but again, I don't think Brie Larson is the problem. She is.
No, she's doing great with what she has,
and she's an award-winning actress. Let's not pretend that Brie Larson came out of nowhere when they cast her. The other thing I see a lot of people on social media talking about too is that, oh well, the Marvels is expecting people to have watched all of these shows, 3 shows, and a movie, and it's like, yeah, that's what you've been doing with the MCU.
Yeah. Endgame made sure you watched a million shows and movies. Fucking
it makes no sense. It's so hypocritical when people are looking for, they want to hate on this movie. They want to hate on the Marvels, and they haven't seen it, and so they're looking for reasons. Oh, well, people haven't seen. Well, if you haven't seen WandaVision, Miss Marvel, Secret Invasion, or the first Captain Marvel movie, I know you saw the first Captain Marvel movie. Again, it made over $1 billion, and it was heavily connected to Endgame. So all of these things are there. You saw these things. You're watching them. They're connected. You wanted an interconnected universe, and now all of a sudden you have a problem with the fact that everything's connected.
And you see what I think, which it's not like super crazy, but I think what makes people hard to wrap their head around is that now they're in the TV space. And in the TV space, they don't want to tune in. One, because it's not, well, no TV is free TV, but it's on a subscription platform, so you have to have Disney Plus to access these shows. And then you have to take the time to not watch 2 hours of a movie, but 8 hours of a show. And a lot of people expect, if you're not a Marvel fan, you're not doing it. If you just like the Marvel universe and you like the MCU and you like the movies, you're probably just not going to watch those shows. If you love Marvel as a whole, as an industry, as its origins as a comic book company, then you most likely have Disney Plus just to watch those Marvel movies. But to others, they don't see it as worth it. And that's, I think, the problem with the model of using the shows. But also not all the shows seem all that enticing. I mean, you saw the numbers that Daredevil did for Netflix, and I don't see any of these shows doing the numbers that Daredevil did for Netflix.
I think that's the problem, is that they were making TV, but they weren't making TV, and that's one of the other things that I've seen a lot of people bring up is that, oh, well, they just, because recently it came out that they scrapped Daredevil. They scrapped the whole thing and they're going back and they're redoing it. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, that means it was terrible. No. For one, there's a lot of other things happening behind the scenes. For one, Marvel was not making TV for TV. They were making movies and then chopping them up into television episodes, trying to make it episodic. That's not how you make TV. That's not how TV is made. Two, there is still an ongoing actor strike. There was a writer's strike. The writer's strike is over. Part of the writer's deal is that the head showrunner has to be head writer. They're running the show now. It's no longer an executive. It's no longer somebody from the company that is
even
in control.
With the strike being over, a lot of writers still aren't writing in solidarity with the actors.
In solidarity with the actors. And I think what people, again, like you mentioned, things that have affected Marvel and the release, and it has affected the shows and the movies. The pandemic, it had a huge effect on the shows that were being made at the time. WandaVision was in full swing when the pandemic hit, and it affected the ending. It affected that finale. The strike with the writers, the strike with the actors. We just got back into the full swing of movies and shows being made, and then everything just completely halted. And that is due in no part to the actors or the writers, but to the studios not wanting to pay anybody a fair wage. The strike ends, and we'll get Deadpool back into production. We'll get all of these things back up. Blade will go back into production. We're talking about a movie that they haven't been able to write for months on Blade because they've been on strike. We can't get the next Deadpool because, again, the studios refuse to make a fair deal. These things have an effect. It's not, oh, Marvel is in shambles. Kevin Feige has lost his touch. He doesn't know what he's doing. That's not the case. Also, people have a revisionist history, and people only remember the last thing they saw. Everybody is so stuck on Infinity War and Endgame that this is the peak of Marvel. This is the epitome. This is what we should be getting every single time.
You have to have, I think, there's a rise and fall for everything. I mean, if you're reading a book, everybody's been to a literacy class, an English class when they were in high school, middle school, whenever. It doesn't matter when. You saw that there was this. And then you had your peak, and then your fall. And you have your rising action, you have your peak and everything. This isn't any different than the longest book ever made. Like, Correct. This is a continuous story, and you're going to have peaks. But here's the thing, and that storyline's over, it's going to fall, and it's going to rise back up even higher, because the only thing you can do is top yourself. And if you don't, you're going to fail. So, and that's what Marvel's going to do. They're going to keep topping themselves, and it's going to be because they're creating constantly more characters. They're going to be putting in more characters for the MCU. They're going to be adding in soon, at some point, the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, which just bigger and bigger. Endgame is going to be so small in comparison to what's to come.
What's to come?
Yeah, it's going down because it has to go back down to earth. You have to love these characters to then care about an ensemble. Why would I watch an ensemble cast movie about a bunch of characters I don't care about?
That's the thing. That's the thing that people seem to forget, is that it took us 10 years to get to Endgame. And it wasn't overnight.
Those Phase 1 movies aren't all that great.
Listen,
they were great because they came out as the MCU and as the first thing, and everybody had the wow factor. That's right. But they were not all that great. And some of these movies you're getting now are better, like Far From Home. Amazing. Better than probably any Phase 1 movie.
You know what?
Fucking Guardians 3 probably better than any Phase 1 movie. Like,
Far From Home gets a lot of hate. A lot of hate. That movie gets, and it's on Netflix now. And it's like they did a great job with Mysterio. And No Way Home, that people were like, oh, it was just nostalgia bait. No, it was a great movie. What an amazing fucking movie.
I left the theater thinking, fuck, they really played on your emotions. There's definitely the fact of, dude, we got 3 generations of Spider-Man. We can hit all bases. Of course, you're gonna do it. And I don't love the whole, just, oh, look, watch Toby. But there are great moments of the movie.
And I will say, they actually did a great job of handling it, because Toby's not in it a ton. It wasn't Toby's movie at all. It wasn't Andrew's movie. It was still Tom's movie.
There was nostalgia bait. There was scenes, but they were going to do it. We all knew they were going to do it. And most of the people clapped for it in the movies, so don't complain about it after the fact. But it still had great moments. The cinematography was amazing on that movie. It had some of the best cinematography work that I've seen in the MCU to date. Like, it felt cinematic in look. And then the interaction between, forget Toby and Andrew, between Tom and the villains that weren't his, the chemistry that he had with them, with William
Yeah.
Dafoe, like that, like those scenes are amazing. I mean,
Willem Dafoe definitely solidified the fact that he's one of the scariest fucking villains ever put to
Goblin
screen.
is underrated as a villain. He's so underrated as a villain.
Let's take a look at real quick too. Is again this revisionist history that people have. Iron Man 3 was trash. Thor 2 is widely
Awful.
hated. People hate on Captain Marvel. Think of some others. People hate on Ultron, which I completely disagree with. And
terrible take.
It's a terrible take, and I'm not going to have that argument right now, but it is a terrible take. These, and I know there's more. Oh, Incredible Hulk. Not great. The larger issue, again, is that people forget that those movies were bad because we've moved past them because we got Infinity War, we got Endgame. Yeah, Love and Thunder was trash, but Guardians was great. Black Panther was great. Spider-Man was great. Shang-Chi was great. This article tries to talk about all of these new characters being a risk and being, oh, I'm sick of the new characters, bring in the legacy characters. But in the same article then talks about, well, they're bringing back Scarlett Johansson and Robert Downey Jr. potentially. Why would they do that if they're in shambles? It's like, you don't want new you want new characters, but you don't because you want the legacy characters back, but you want them to move on. Like,
and I know me and you have had slight conversations on this, and we differ in the opinion on that. So I think there's multiple ways you can go with the MCU, and I won't question anything that Kevin Feige does because who the fuck are we? We're just people. He is the only guy that knows how to do this. But I do not think move on is my thing. There's a thing that you always get in the comics is that characters always exist.
Yep.
The same character has been talked about for a century for some of them, and you get the same storylines. And yes, you can have everybody together, and that's great. But this is real life. This is movies. You have actual actors that have to play these roles, and they will either age or have to move on with their time. Like, there's going to be a point where you're just not going to have Peter Parker Spider-Man, as hard as it is to think about not having something with Spider-Man in the MCU. Yeah. Tom Holland is either going to get way too old to portray any version of Spider-Man, or he's just going to move on from the role because he wants to pursue other things. And I think you have to allow the moments that you made to sink in and move past them. You already got Vision back, which we already kind of knew was going to happen. And you got Gamora back. Two people that were supposed to be dead for good. And I think it takes away from the moment you build. And if you bring back
the storytelling,
bring back RDJ, the storytelling losing the moment that you created.
Good though, with like, look at Gamora, she's not the same version, and Guardians 3 plays really well on that.
Yeah, but it was cheap. Like, I love Guardians 3. I thought it was a great movie, but bringing Gamora back, everybody was like, "What?" Like, it feel like it didn't do a great job explaining it. Like, it felt like it didn't. Like, it felt out of place to have her there.
Here's the other thing that the article plays on: they're bringing them back. We don't know, and I can guarantee my take on what I assume is going to happen with them bringing back RDJ and Scarlett Johansson is they're going to be multiverse versions of themselves. They're going to be a different version of them, which I think is fine. And I think that works in the story without undermining the death of RDJ.
I think it does. I think it does undermine.
I don't think so, only because, look, Logan was fantastic, and I didn't want to see Hugh Jackman come back as Wolverine after Logan because the ending was perfect. But he's coming back for Deadpool, and I'm excited because it's a different version of himself. It's a different point in time.
At what point do we say that there's like no consequences to what happens?
That's That's comics. That's comics.
I know it's comics, but then I loved Robert Downey Jr.'s time as Iron Man. But the Iron Man part of the MCU, I think, is over. I think we close the door and we give him the perfect send-off.
I don't want to not have him when we get to Secret Wars, which is arguably one of the largest events to have ever happened in Marvel Comics.
Yes, it's the largest, one of the largest events ever. However,
How do you do
again,
everything? How do you bring everybody together and then say, but not
how do you
RDJ?
move forward?
You
How do you move
because
forward? Because
if
eventually, how old's RDJ? 50,
if what I'm
55?
seeing is right, Secret Wars is going to be a collective end for what we know as the MCU, and everything that comes after Secret Wars is going to be a soft reboot of the universe. We're going to move on from not just RDJ, but a lot of people, a lot of characters. And that's going to include Toby Spider-Man, Andrew Spider-Man, Hugh Jackman, and a lot of the X-Men. And I think we need that.
But do we?
We need a collective. Yes, we need to move on. We get a new Iron Man.
When did Logan come out?
Logan came out in 20
roundabout, like what, 2014, 15, around there?
No,
later.
I think so. Let me see. I'm just gonna double check real quick. 2017.
2017. Okay, so it's been 6 years without Wolverine. We've already been going, what, 4 years without RDJ?
It's going to be even longer.
Yeah. And then so many years without Toby and Andrew. I love them. I revisit the movies, whatever. I mean, except for, in Spider-Man. But before that, we didn't go that long without them and go, oh, they should be back. No, it's just fine. Like, things end and you move on from it. You don't need this grand
goodbye. The other thing is that a lot of these things, Marvel's always been really good at secrets, but I think the pandemic, the strike, with all of this dead air and nothing happening, information has come out that Marvel can't control it being out. And I think that's part of the problem. Look at it. Spider-Man was in development during the pandemic, and a lot of leaks ended up coming out, but Marvel tried to keep that under wraps. They tried to keep the villains in the returning Spider-Man under wraps. Actually, they never released a trailer with Andrew or Toby in it.
Yeah, I know. They were on shows doing interviews. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a photo of you on set.
They embraced the villains. They embraced the villains coming back, but honestly, I think the only reason they embraced Ock coming back and Goblin coming back is because, and Electro, was because it had already gotten out and they couldn't backtrack it. They couldn't. Alfred Molina had already said, like, yeah, I'm doing another Spider-Man movie. Like, they were already so far gone at that point that they were like, okay, well, we're going to try and keep Toby and Andrew a secret. And I wish I could have gone into that movie blind. That movie would have blown me away.
It would have been great, but you saw, like, the worst acting from Toby and Andrew on those talk shows, trying to be like,
horrible.
No.
Horrible. I never played Spider-Man. What?
There's a photo of you on set. Yeah, that's Photoshop.
That's not me. Deep fake. I think, again, Marvel's not in a bad place. Yes, have there not been great movies, but also people argue about, we want something different. Marvel follows a formula and I need something new. And then when Marvel does something new, and I'm going to list off some ones, people turn around and say, that was trash. No, it's just that it's different and you don't really want different. You're a consumer and you like what you like. Miss Marvel and the Marvels. It's for a younger crowd, and there's nothing wrong with that. Moon Knight tried to do something.
Unsuccessful.
Eternals was a lot more of it was more grown up. It was more serious, and people shitted on it. And I think Eternals is fantastic. Marvel has branched out. They did Werewolf by Night, and it was in black and white, and it was awesome. It was awesome. How quickly we've moved on from that to say they're in shambles. They're a mess. They don't know what they're doing. If we were looking at the comics, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Squirrel Girl, not really reading those, not picking them up. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is also typically more geared towards a younger crowd. The same way that Moon Knight, Punisher, geared towards a different crowd. It's more grown up. It's more adult.
Here's the thing that I think bothers people is that when it comes to the MCU, you have to watch them. Because it's all interconnected. And comics are like that too, to the point where they have crossovers. You read one comic, you have to read another. You read X-Men, you're probably gonna have to read Wolverine, and you're gonna have to read X Factor, and then you're gonna
But you
have to
don't have
read
to
all
though
these
either.
things.
But you don't have to,
to
because they do
follow the
explain it.
story.
But they do. There is a lot of explanation that's given, and enough explanation that you can get by
But
without having watched
I think
it.
the difference is that when they do it in the comics, you have family friendly comics, saying that you have to read other family friendly comics. When you read X-Men, you have to read other X-Men like comics. When you read Spider-Man, you have to read other Spider-Man like comics.
But this is what
But
I'm
when
saying.
when you get into those, but in the MCU, it's all so interconnected that you have to watch the rated R movie and the family friendly movie to then get the bigger picture in the long run. Maybe you don't have to absolutely have to, but they suggest that you do. So
You can,
I have to watch this movie I don't want to see.
Yeah.
I can get the frustration, but I mean, people can be picky and choosy. I don't think it's something to complain about. But
if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. You didn't like it. That's fine. Not.
But I can understand the frustration of saying, like, I almost have to see this movie. For me to see the next one, I have to see this one.
Couple other points that they bring up. Terrible work environments for VFX workers. That's not just happening in Marvel. VFX workers are unionizing across the board. And Marvel did end up firing the head of the department, Victoria Alonso. Again, a lot of these issues that the article brings up have either already been worked on or course corrected or in the works of being fixed by Marvel currently.
Or are issues that were previously industry standard.
Yeah.
Like they're not new issues or Marvel issues, it's industry standard issues.
Yeah. Crunch time in the work conditions, it is, and it's horrible. One of the big things that I hated this one, they tried to throw shots at Nia DaCosta, who's the director of the Marvels, and that fact that when the Marvels went into post-production, she started working on her next movie. That's normal. It's normal. It couldn't be more normal. When Steven Spielberg made Ready Player One, which is a humongous movie, when that movie went into post-production, he made the post. There are countless directors that work on other movies as soon as they're because the director is not the editor. They're there to take calls and to see the edits as they're being done, and if there's issues, if there's reshoots that need to be done. But when the editing process happens and it's all in post-production, the director doesn't create the VFX. That's being done by that team. So the director moves to their next project and starts working on their next project. That's normal. Do you think that if Tom Holland, he finishes filming Spider-Man, well, the movie's in post-production and they're editing it, so he shouldn't be filming his next movie, he shouldn't be working on another project? That's not how the industry works. You start working as soon as you can.
If you see that a director has put out more than one movie in a year, that means that they had overlap in their schedules with the filming of movies.
Correct.
Because to film a movie takes at least 3 months minimum. Filming, not all the prep you have to do beforehand or the editing after the fact. So put it all into account, at least 6 months. Yeah. At least bare minimum 6 months when it comes said and done. You can't push out more than one movie in a year if you don't do that overlap and take the time that things don't need you. And I mean, if you want to go back to even casting and all that stuff, you're saying a year. Yeah. If you don't have any overlap in your movie schedules, then you're not putting out more than one thing a year, which almost any director at any point has pushed out more than one movie a year, unless your name is Tarantino. Yeah. Unless you're shooting a movie every 5 years, you are putting out more than one movie a year at some point in your career.
The other thing that people are forgetting too is that the Marvels has no press happening about it because of the strike. Because of the strike, not because Marvel doesn't have faith in the brand or the character. The strike has stopped actors from promoting their movies, from doing interviews, because the studios don't want to pay anybody. This is the repercussions. So it has nothing to do with the brand. Unfortunately, the Marvels is suffering from the fact that they can't promote it, that there's no advertisement for it except for just the trailers that Marvel drops. There's nobody to talk about it. There's nobody to hype up this movie. I would have loved to have seen Oh, I'm trying to blank now. I would have loved to have seen this whole cast. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson's back, and he didn't even
Well,
get
like
to
on
promote Secret Invasion,
no, which
which
I think the show's a
is
little bit of
fine.
a flop. But
Um,
to me, also, I think when people like when they're talking about it in the article, they're like, "Oh, well, the Marvels doesn't look great." So like that was the hope. That was the last stand. Like that was the last straw for the MCU. For anybody that thought the Marvels was going to like, if you thought the MCU was doing bad, like, and just hypothetically, if you thought they were doing bad, did you think the Marvels was the saving grace? Like, there's also an expectation to be had too. Like, they hold every Marvel movie to the expectation of Endgame.
which is stupid.
The Marvels was never going to be that. Like,
Yeah,
if
but
did you watch the first Captain Marvel movie? Even if I know you think it's not that bad. Even if you think it's not that bad, it's not amazing. I mean, you saw Miss Marvel, like
and
the
I thought,
show. It's not bad, but it's not amazing.
and
Like
here's the
you see
thing.
all these things, and what makes you think that the next one in line is just going to be blow your mind? Like unless you're just talking about Thor Ragnarok, which was just kind of a shot in the dark. Nothing goes from not great to the best thing you've ever seen.
But
Like
even that, let's look at that. Thor Ragnarok, lightning in a bottle.
lightning in a bottle. Fuck that's
Because
the next one.
Love
No,
and
that's what I'm
Thunder,
saying.
yeah,
It
horrible.
was it was a great shot that they took and it hit, but you can't say, oh, like just put it in regular terms. You're playing basketball. Someone misses a shot. They miss their next shot. Why do you expect the third shot to go in? Can it? Of course. But this person's cold. Like we're not gonna like just automatically put expectations on them to win the game.
Yeah.
It makes no sense at all. Now, can it be a good movie? Absolutely. Can you watch it and have fun with it? Sure. Is it the saving grace, which there is no saving grace, Marvel's doing fine. Is it the saving grace of anything? No. It doesn't need to be, and that's not what it's made to do anyway. To me, I see Guardians as more of a saving grace thing. It already came out and it was already amazing.
Yeah, and some other like the other thing, Guardians was fantastic. The other movie that was really good that came out, and it suffers from the fact that they had to change this movie, and people haven't talked about it. It's one thing that the article actually doesn't bring up, but it is an issue that occurred. It's not an issue; it's life. The passing of Chadwick Boseman severely impacted a lot of things. He was going to be he was still around. We lost Cap, we lost Iron Man, we lost Black Widow, right?
And he
But
is supposed to be one of the next one up.
Black Panther was going to be one of the next big characters. His passing, which is extremely tragic, had an effect on where do we go and what do we do.
And which I think handled correctly.
I think
I think they handled it so far very well.
I think
And
so
I
too.
think if they move on with it well, can like
And I think
terrible. You will obviously wish Chadwick was still there, but
yeah.
the way they're handling it is great.
And I think
Shuri
with
is the Black Panther. There is Chadwick Jr. Well, T'Challa Jr.
Yep.
sitting around, so that at some point you'll still have T'Challa in the MCU.
I think with Secret
think that's
Wars and the end in kind of a reboot, we are in a space where we can recast Black Panther and get Black Panther back. And that's beautiful. And I think that's what we should do. But I do think they handled it well. And I think that the decision to have Shuri and, the family.
I like Shuri in as the Black Panther. And I think we might have talked about this on a different episode, but especially with them bringing in the X-Men at some point, I honestly wouldn't be mad and would love if they brought in Storm through Wakanda. I mean, she is the African princess, and she ends up being married to T'Challa, which he's no longer around. So if you want to, I don't think her sexuality is strict to her character. You bring her in through Wakanda, and I think it all still works really well. Or even if you don't want to make Storm a character right away, there's storylines where Storm is a child. There's a lot of storylines where Storm is a child, and you could bring her in later with Chadwick Jr. if you really want to, or T'Challa Jr. I keep using Chadwick. But there's stories from when she was a child and in Africa, and then her basically being raised by the Thieves Guild in Gambit in storylines where she's a child. So you don't have to bring her in the phase 1 of X-Men. You could bring her in later and still have her be married to the king of Wakanda, T'Challa, Black Panther. Or you could bring her in sooner because everybody wants to see her and put her in with Shuri. I mean, I think there's a lot of spaces that you can go with, and I think you can do it right by still keeping Shuri as the Black Panther.
Yeah, I think that can work as well. I just think it's outrageous to say that these movies are in shambles. The other big issue that the article brings up, and it is an ongoing thing, but it's Jonathan Majors as Kang, and he has the trial going on. He's going to trial over the domestic assault allegations that were brought up and the incident that happened with him in New York. Marvel jumped the gun, ironically, with James Gunn when everything happened. When old tweets and jokes resurfaced with him, and Disney said, get rid of him. And they jumped the shark, and they fired him. He went on to direct Suicide Squad. Marvel ended up hiring him back to finish Guardians. And now he's taking over DC. They had to rescind something that they had done because they made a quick and, sweeping decision.
Well, because I think for a long time there was a lack of accountability in the industry because times were different and people were different and all these things, and people would rather turn the blind eye for celebrity power.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, and then there was the overcorrection of it, of people saying, well, this person did this 20 years ago and it wasn't that bad, but do you see what they said? And there was the overcorrection of just, we have to make everything right since nothing was made right beforehand.
The other thing is that it's such a quick reaction. Everybody's quick.
But then when they had the quick reactions, they were seeing, just the biggest storyline of 2 years ago, Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
What happened to Johnny Depp because of people just jumping the gun on what was said. So then the overcorrection, then people are like, oh shit. Then they're realizing we overcorrected.
Correct.
Now we are indicting innocent people. So, which I don't keep up with a lot of the celebrity drama and cases because I don't really care about their personal lives or what happens. I just know that came out with Jonathan Majors, and then shortly after that, there was evidence more siding with him. So you never know, and I don't know how that trial is going or whatever.
And it's in progress and it is happening, and Marvel is waiting for it to play out, and that's, I think, the smart thing to do is let these things play out and take it from there, one step at a time. Because you end up in a situation where, all right, we fired him, we're gonna recast him, or we're just gonna cut him. What do we do? Let it play out. Let's figure out.
But I will say, if there's a character to recast, Kang's the perfect one.
It makes total sense.
You could go through seamlessly. Why does he look different? Doesn't matter. He's not the same guy.
It's the multiverse. These things are just, it's so insane. And it's also, what's funny is the Variety article came out a couple days ago. A couple days after the article comes out, the Echo trailer drops. And the Echo trailer looks fantastic. And all of a sudden, everybody who was freaking out, it's in shambles, Marvel's dying, Feige doesn't know what he's doing. Oh my god, Marvel's back. Really, people?
Which I will say, I was never on the side of Marvel is in shambles. There's never a case for me. But, and I just watched the Echo trailer before we got on here. I was very excited seeing the trailer for the little things, not because I'm like, Echo, that's a character I've been waiting to see. No, I think it could be a great show, but she's not the character that I'm like, Echo, But the little things about that trailer, the intensity of that trailer, just the grunts and the noises, the cutting to black and cutting back in, the blood on the knuckles, just showing that there is gore in this. Not alluding to it, not teasing it, but straight up showing you there's blood running from someone's eyes. There's not blood splatter on a suit. We've seen that before in the MCU, but there is blood running down his arm. Things that we were hoping we would get with Moon Knight. we are getting an
That part.
Echo,
That part. No,
and
because
that's
what pisses me off watching the Echo trailer is what happened to Moon Knight? What happened?
to that they thought they could dance around it and
No.
like be like, oh, here's a little bit, and not dive into it. And I think they saw the non-success,
Yeah.
and now here it is.
Yeah.
They're like, we have to do this, because I think there's a difference when they said Deadpool can be rated R. Rated R can mean a lot of things. Like, you can be rated R because of your language and the
Yep.
jokes you make, which
Could be
could
because
very
of the
well be
blood.
Deadpool. You could be rated R from gore. You can be rated R from nudity. You can be
Yep.
rated R for a lot of reasons. And with Deadpool, you could be rated R just because of his language and jokes.
Yep.
And that's not a big deal for the MCU.
Yeah.
Showing things that kids don't want to see, or parents don't want their kids to see, is something different.
Case in point, Guardians 3. Star-Lord drops the F-bomb, and it was hilarious. Open the fucking door. Great. It was great. It didn't take me out of the movie. It felt natural. It was hilarious. And it doesn't ruin it.
They were ready to do it with language, but I think they were like, we don't have to do gore. Like, we don't need to do this. And I think the drop of Moon Knight and the bad reception and the lack of views on Moon Knight made them think, all right, we kind of have to go all in on the rated R ratings, which is also, I think, could be great long haul. I think the fact that the writer's strike is done before the actor's strike, and so like things have to change on Deadpool.
Yep.
Like, is great, because now they can do a lot of ad lib. They can rewrite. They can do, their script doesn't have to be 100%.
Yeah.
And the fact that they are now allowing gore, because Deadpool isn't just a funny character. He's a violent, funny character. So with all the stuff happening and them saying, oh, Echo can release with this happening, now Deadpool, again, because this could just make Deadpool better, could also step in with gore. It might just be funny. It might be gory and funny, which is the entire concept
like
of the
Logan.
character. So I think
with the gore anyway, I mean,
Deadpool can benefit from things like the failures of others and the strike happening, because beforehand, with just the writer's strike, they're like, oh, we're going to keep making Deadpool. Deadpool's going to push for its release date, but we can't change any lines.
Right.
Now, the actor's on strike. You can't make anything. And now when you are going to be able to make something, you can change your lines. Because Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman in a movie, not everything's going to be the script. Like, it's just, you want them being as creative as possible on that movie. So Deadpool, I think, is one that makes me more excited. Seeing the Echo trailer makes me excited to then see what Daredevil's going to bring. Yeah. What Deadpool's going to bring. It makes me more excited for the universe as a whole.
I will end everything just on this note of the MCU is not in shambles. Not everything is great. Not every movie, not every project can be great. But also, keep in mind, people, that not every project has to be for you. Not everything has to be to your liking. Sometimes we have to step out and go into other genres and try something new, and that's okay. I trust Kevin Feige. He's been doing this a long time. He's been very, very successful. Very fucking successful at doing what he's done. And I have faith. For people who think things aren't as connected, let's remember it took us a long time to get to Endgame and to Infinity War. Things had to get built up. We're starting fresh with a new saga, with a new villain. Things have to get built up. We will start seeing things connect. They will connect eventually, and everything will come to fruition. But let's just stop the constant hate on projects that aren't out yet, or the, oh, this was trash, so the next thing's going to be trash. I see people that put out YouTube videos all the time. People like Soups, who is constantly flip-flopping on the, oh, this is terrible. Oh, Marvel, I'm sorry, I freaked out. Like let's just baseline it.
I think there's definitely a point where you have to say, don't hate on something before it comes out, because of the reason when you do that, at some point it has an impact. So far, I don't think there's an impact. Marvel's still so successful. But when you do hate on things so much, you end up burying a movie like Solo.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what my thought was, is that you hate on something and then Solo suffered, and Solo was fantastic. And that it's a shame that it didn't perform the way it should have, because Solo was a lot of fun. It was a really good movie.
Yeah. So you end up burying movies because you didn't like a different movie.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
So let's drop the entitlement and let's just enjoy it. That's what movies are for, right? They're there for our enjoyment. So just go and enjoy it. And if you don't like it, it's like reading a comic. If you don't like it, or it's like playing a video game. If you don't like it, stop playing it. If you don't like it, stop reading it. You know, I don't currently read Spider-Man for that reason. I don't care for the story that Peter Parker's going through in the comics. But that doesn't mean in the future I might pick up, Peter's Spider-Man story again. But that's normal. That's the nature of this type of storytelling specifically.
Yep. And that's 100% true, because I have watched almost every superhero movie to ever exist, but there's some that I didn't watch because I didn't care to see it, and that's fine. It doesn't take me out of it. Doesn't make me any less of a fan that I didn't see Black Widow. I
will say this for the fans that are talking about the Marvels is going to be trash, blah, blah, blah. If I find out that you're the same fans that went and saw Venom Let There Be Carnage after seeing that trailer, I don't want to hear from you. All right? I don't want to hear none of that, because that movie was trash from the trailer, and I unfortunately watched it, and it was horrible. Just like I knew it would be. Just like the first movie was. Okay? That's not Venom. That's not Carnage. Terrible movie.
When you
saw
Woody Harrelson in that Annie wig, and you said, that's what I needed. I needed that one right there.
There will be Carnage. Who wrote this? And you're complaining about the Marvels?
Oh,
fuck!
It was the same people that said Fantastic Four.
Yeah. Say that again. I think I got it. Cut to black.
I think I got it.
Who wrote this? Yeah, that's my TED Talk. That's my shtick for Marvel.
Yeah. So on that note, thank you everybody for tuning in on this episode of the Beer and Skittles podcast. And hopefully we can stick to our strong schedule now, and we can go back to bringing back content now that life seems to be a little less crazy.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
See you then.